Good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting a class on OCT metrics, basically measurements which are possible on OCT. I got help from Girija and Mohana, who are there in our optoms in our OCT section. So, starting from 1971 to now 2014, we have come from first generation, second generation OCT, and then now to the commercial OCT angiography. So there have been a lot of evolution in this field. The principle of OCT is Michelson's interferometry, where a low coherence light beam is directed onto the target tissue and scattered back. The reflected light combined with the second beam, which is the reference beam, along with the incident light, gives an interference pattern which constructs A scans. So this interference patterns gives us the OCT image which we see. Number of A scans, a particular number of A scans together form a B scan, which we see as the OCT report. So analyzing OCT is basically can be divided into two parts. One is the qualitative analysis and the quantitative analysis. Today I'll be talking about the quantitative analysis. So measurements in the OCT can be either automated, which are done by the machine, and manual, which we have to do by ourselves using calipers or other tools which are available in the OCT. So the main measurements which are usually done over here, which we see printed in our reports also, are the central subfield thickness, the macular cube volume, then the retinal thickness. The SSOCT gives us the retinal profile. And the manual measurements which can be done by using calipers are the foveal thickness, choroidal thickness, macular hole parameters, which we all know of, are usually done before the macular hole surgeries. And a specific lesion, whichever is there, we can measure the size of the lesion in the B scan also, and the area of the lesion in the angio also. So on the OCT printout, we see topographic macular maps. How are they formed? Basically, it is 6 radial scans passing through the center of the OCT. And they are segmented to form a sector of a grid of four 9 zones. One is the central zone, which is the first 1 mm zone. This one. Then the next is the 3 mm and the next is the 6 mm. These measurements you can see printed on any of the OCT reports which we get on the SD-OCT reports. The important one out of these is the central subfield thickness. This is basically the central 1 mm. It's the mean of the 128 thickness measurements which are taken in this area. This is called as the central subfield, and a mean of these measurements we call as the central subfield thickness. Also, we get the cube volume and the cube average thickness along with this. The color coding which is done is based on a normative database which is already filled, which is already in the system. It uses a color coding so that we can identify whether these measurements lie in the normal or they are above or below normal, because it changes with every in here we have the Asian distribution normative database with us. So if it is red, it means that it lies in the thickest of the 1% measurements. If it is light yellow, it lies between 95 to in the thickest 5%. The green, if we see a green color, that means it lies it is normal between 5% and the middle 90%. The thinnest ones are the dark yellow, and if it is red, then that means it is in the thinnest of the 1% measurements. So this is a printout.
Can you ask our students all the red arrows? Yeah.
So the first one starting here.
First red arrow.
This map
Yeah.
can
Left top.
Yeah, so this is NFAS.
NFAS what?
Of the left eye.
No, ideally what you should call this. It's not, you don't call it NFAS. What do you call that? What is your SD-OCT? Uses what? White light? Laser light?
It's a laser light. It's infrared.
All right, infrared. And what is the image that you see?
So that's the coherence between
They've
the,
written there.
yes, display
No, they've written that.
overlay.
That is overall OCT fundus. So it's an SLO, OCT SLO scan. What do you see? So the OCT reflectance image. The OCT, what you see, it's not a photograph. The Topcon used to have it, but this is not the. This is an image which is made up from the laser reflectance. So this is the SLO OCT scan that you see.
The next one is the ETDRS grid, which I described earlier, along with the average measurements in each of the zones. Then we have the B scans. One is the horizontal B scan and the other one is the vertical. This again, we can see that this box is lined by blue and this is a blue line which is passing horizontally. Otherwise, also, usually the horizontal scan is here and the vertical scan is there. This is the fundus NFAS image. These numbers are the location of the fovea, like the B scans, which are 512 by 128. So the horizontal and the vertical, the number of the B scan, where the fovea is located. This is the ILM to RP thickness map, the surface maps, and the average measurements. The next thing which the machine can do is to
Yeah, I just have one more question. Go back. Yeah, you have green, you have yellow, you have pink. When they say normative data, what all are the parameters you need to have normative data? Akshat, to say it is normative data, what all do you take into consideration? You say, I'm doing normative data for this machine, I'm doing my normative data for that, and based on that, I have given this. So, what are all the parameters one needs to consider when you establish normative data?
Ma'am, age, gender,
Okay.
race of the, means it is Asian
Okay.
population.
Yeah, this is Asian
Asian
population. You take age, you take gender, anything else?
And refraction,
Yeah. What refraction normally would you exclude?
high myopes,
No, there will be a refraction value which says that beyond this, plus or minus. Anyone? 6, usually 4. Usually 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, OCT team sitting here.
On either side, plus minus.
Yeah, it's usually 4 diopters plus minus that you would take to take your normative data. Okay. So not only race, you have gender, you have refractive error, you have sex, and you have age. Okay.
And on this scan, you see this. This is clearer than this scan because this is the one which is the horizontal one. You see that? These are 512 scans going through here. It is vertical and 60, only 128. So if you look at this, so there's a logic. These are all no units in this. That means they're just plain numbers. They are just location maps. So 267, which is the 267th or whatever it was.
Scan number 235 intersects scan number 67 at the fovea, or whatever point it is you're studying. Okay. In this case, it is the fovea. That's why it's written fovea. You can do it at any point of interest. And it's important because I think, as she will show you, the next time you do it, if you don't have eye tracking software, you ensure that that is the same point. Okay. Yeah.
But how much will we go to the next slide? Yeah, between these two, she has chosen this slide. How much will be the difference between the two? Let's say it's not really correctly
This is
overlaid.
very little,
There's
very
a
little. No,
difference of
it's
at
hardly
least.
one on one end.
This is still okay. But
This is
otherwise,
still okay.
how much would you?
I don't think there's any.
Mona, is there anything?
How much?
the registration comes successful.
I don't see
only.
that much. Okay, so if your registration is
Comes.
perfect, your measurements are accurate. Let us say that your comparison of measurements is accurate.
For example, when this shows no
It's
registration.
not. Huh?
This shows no registration on the left hand side.
That is because both are not the same.
If the values are the same, then it comes in green above that the registration is successful.
Sometimes you have very thick edema, you may get no registration over that particular lesion also.
So if the patient is coming for the next time, the machine can give us the values, which is one in a color coded map. This has qualitatively we can see that the edema is reduced. Also, the warmer colors are turned into green. Here again, we can get the numbers can be, the subtracted numbers are given over here, the difference between the two thickness. So this also can be seen. So in case there is not much difference in this two, we can judge on the basis of the numbers which are here. Then the SSOCT machine has another software which is called, which can give us average values in this kind of a rectangular grid, which again used for mostly research purposes where we can calculate the mean value. Also, it gives us the ETDRS grid. Okay, so usually what the machine does is calculates the total thickness. Why the calculation of different layers of the retina is not possible? Because there is not much of a drastic difference between the, firstly, so the resolution of the machine is low. Secondary, the scattering of light when it goes from one layer to the another is not drastic. So that is why we cannot generate maps for different layers as it is done for a complete total retinal thickness. Still, there have been researchers who have been developing algorithms to map different layers on the machine for better analysis. These are certain examples. So these people have actually tried to divide the retina into 3 or 4 zones, either an inner retinal and an outer retinal zone, or a nerve fiber layer along with an inner retinal complex and then an outer retinal complex. These are again still being tried. Different algorithms are still being generated, but the standardized measurements are still of the total retinal thickness also only. And apart from that, for glaucoma evaluation, the retinal nerve fiber layer and the ganglion cell layer can be calculated. Apart from that, we cannot do an automated segmentation currently here. The next part is the manual measurements, which we all know which are taken. The main measurements are the foveal thickness and the choroidal thickness. The foveal thickness is taken from the center. This is again the center of the intersection of the 6 radial scans. And the choroidal thickness is between the lower margin of the RP Brooks membrane and the upper margin of the choroidoscleral complex. This is usually the choroidal thickness is measured either on the SSOCT or with the enhanced depth imaging in the SDOCT. It is not possible in the plain SDO. This is just a way it is done usually. So there are free calipers, freehand calipers where we can place. But here there is inter-observer variation, plus these are not standardized. But the ETDRS grid measurements which we get on the automated software are the standardized ones which we can use for research purposes. The other clinical applications are macular hole indices, where we see the base diameter, the minimum linear diameter, the macular hole index, as well as the hole form factor. This is an example of linear measurement taken of a choroidal nevus with the caliper. These are just some examples where in this study the cyst diameter is calculated, the vertical and the horizontal cyst diameter is calculated. Here they have calculated the photoreceptor outer segment length for prognostication after ERM removal surgery. Numerous such calculations are possible along with the use of the calipers which we have. The next is the OCT angiography. There are certain indices which can be calculated in OCT angiography in the machines which we have over here also. It gives information regarding the perfusion status of the retina. Basically it detects the blood flow signal within the range covered by a given OCTA device's sensitivity. The reduction in the perfusion is either because of can be recorded either because of the blood flow changes outside the range of the OCTA sensitivity, or it can be a real loss of perfusion also. The 3 main indices which are calculated in the machines here are the foveal avascular zone, the vessel density, and the perfusion density. The foveal avascular zone can be calculated, there can be automated measurement also, and manual measurement also can be done. There is a capillary free region localized at the margin of the fovea. This is calculated both at the superficial and the deep complexes. It is a physiologic finding, and an enlargement in the OVEAL avascular zone is interpreted as an early sign of the reduced macular perfusion. For the FOVEAL avascular zone, the FAZ area is calculated, the FAZ perimeter is calculated, and the circularity is calculated. These values are in, this is millimeter square millimeter, and this is a unitless value. It is just how similar it can be to a circle. So it ranges between 0 to 1. This is how it looks on the scan. So this is an automated measurement which is taken, and it is mentioned on the right hand side corner. This we can get only if we've asked for it. This is not usually present in the reports which we get, but if we want it to be calculated, we can calculate it from the scans which are taken. The other two important ones are the vessel density and the perfusion density. The vessel density is the total length of the perfused vasculature per unit area in the region of the measurement. It is basically ratio between the white pixels, which are the retinal capillaries, and the black pixels on the binarized OCT reconstruction value. The minimum value is 0. The maximum can be any number. It is an unbound value. Whereas the perfusion density is the total area of the perfused vasculature per unit area in the region of the measurement. This is measured in percentage. This is also available here on the machines which we have. This is given in numbers in the area which are mapped, similar with the perfusion density. And we can have a comparison between two scans also. So here they give us the difference between the values. These values are clinically, we usually don't analyze, but yeah, these are important when it comes to research. When we want, these are the automatically calculated values, so these can be entered, we can analyze them and get a result. There are a few other measurements which are possible, but for them we need to download, either download of software or these are not possible in the machines over here. So the first is a vessel length density. It is a ratio between the length and the unit area calculated on the skeletonized image. There's a vessel rarefaction, which is a measure of the mean distance among the vessels. These are measures of perfusion reduction or non-perfusion. Similarly, we have measures of perfusion disorganization also. There is something called as a fractal dimension, which is a geometrical index of the branching complexity that can be applied to the vascular microanatomy. Then there's vessel dispersion, which is a measure of the standard deviation on the Gaussian distribution of a vascular network. So any angiography image, first we need to do an averaging of the image so that a high contrast vessel image can be seen. These are just terms which we need to know if the other measurements need to be done. So there is image binarization. Any image, the calculation of the vessel density also is done on a binarized image. It is a threshold is applied so that the retinal capillaries are isolated from the background. Similarly, skeletonization is basically it reduces the dimension of the vessel so that topographical and the geometrical features can be distinguished. So this is just a basic algorithm how it works. First we do the segmentation, after then the binarization. These parameters can be calculated, and then after skeletonization we can get the fractal dimension and the vessel dispersion. There is a software called as an ImageJ software where these processes can be done, and then we can calculate values. This is a lesion size measurement which is possible on our angio machine, where this is a freehand caliper which we can use. This can come of use when we take when the patient comes back for a follow up, and if we want to see how much the difference in the area of the lesion is there. Also, the caliper can be put on the B scan, so comparatively we can compare between the two scans. So what are the errors which can come when we are measuring the retinal thickness? Firstly, if the software does not delineate the retinal boundaries, it will cause segmentation breakdown, and the measurement which we get is not going to be right. A few of them are, First is media haze, so the measurements which we get on this scan are not reliable. Secondly, a scan like this where there is media haze, the fovea finder, we cannot locate the fovea. So this cannot be these are not the accurate measurements. Then it has moved up. There is something called as a signal strength also, which is written over here. It's covered by this line. That should be more than 6 or 7 to get a good quality scan. This is a blink artifact. So here again, these measurements we cannot rely on. A mirror artifact, when comes in the center, the measurements cannot be calculated. In AMD or in patients with VMT, again it might cause segmentation failure. When these artifacts are present usually in the central 1 mm, then the subfield thickness which we get is not reliable. So how to avoid this? First, we need to be aware of what are these artifacts and to avoid these artifacts during the image acquisition. The signal strength preferably should be more than 7. In cases of eccentric fixation, we can improve the scan by manually shifting the scan grid. In an off-center map, once the scan is taken, we can reposition the ETDRS grid on the fovea for a more accurate thickness map. Acknowledgements. Thank you, everyone.
You would have done a lot of OCTs. You've gone through a lot of different versions of OCTs also.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Your experience.
Maybe this is worthwhile to share. Recently, we analyzed OCTA images and the artifact present, especially in a myopic, where there is no significant lesion, especially in the macular area. What we found was nearly 70% of the images had nearly 7 or 8 different published artifact. What is very interesting is when we categorize, there are 3 different kind of major classification. One is the blink or a fixation related. The second one is more of a projection related artifact, because the myopic eye do have early vitreous changes. These vitreous cause some shadowing kind of. Third is there is a axial difference, that is a peripheral refraction related. There is a difference, asymmetry between the nasal to the temporal. Nasals are very different compared to the temporal. So because of that, we do get mirror artifact, what kind of. So these three things are majorly causing, and they invariably affect the quantitative measures, especially the microvascular related issues. When we looked at not much work being done related to how this image can be restored, the only way people are talking about is take multiple reading. Either you manually average it, or you try to come with a automated repositioning algorithm and recalculate. But at present, any of this are not available with the inbuilt software. So these are all the little experience I can share it at this moment. And this particular work was presented in a recent Indian Myopia conference, and it won the Best Paper Award. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity.
Can I ask you some questions?
Please,
on that
ma'am.
study? What was the extent of myopia and what were the axial lengths you took?
We the myopia, we categorize 3. Actually, the recent international myopic classification right now is there is nothing called moderate. It's something they club anything was then minus 0.5 to minus 6 as a low and moderate, and the high is in about 6. We had almost equal amount of number of eyes. If I remember exactly, it is something like 43 eyes of mild to moderate and nearly 38 eyes of high myopic. And the range was, obviously, the mean was somewhere around 4 diopter with a standard deviation of 2.2.
And what were you looking at in terms of vasculature?
Basically, what we looked at, what the inbuilt algorithm gives, like our vessel density and the perfusion defect. And in addition, we also looked at the FAZ dimensions. We have not done any sophisticated or any external software. We just looked at inbuilt algorithm, how this artifacts are influencing this parameter.
And what was the size of the scan that you used?
6 into 6.
6 into 6.
Yes.
And did you find 6 into 6 a problem at certain degrees of myopia?
Yes, ma'am. There are one thing we have not done, that is one of our major limitation. As the axial length increases, because of the relative distance magnification, we need to correct based on the axial length. There is a this has been published. There is a correction called Bennett correction, which we need to apply. But the moment we are going away from the instrument itself, because these factors are not there with the instrument. Maybe one point it's worth, all the OCTs do have, there is something called assumed axial length design. Generally, it is something like a 23.8 or 23.9. That is assumed axial length. And they give one standard deviation tolerance. So anything beyond that or shorter, obviously it required this magnification correction, especially when it comes our OCTA related parameter.
The reason I'm asking you this question is because when you have very high degrees of myopia and a posterior staphyloma, your 6 mm.
None adverse staphyloma in this case.
That's why I asked you how you divided it. So that means you use this only in moderate degrees of myopia,
Yes, ma'am.
where there was no staphyloma.
Yes, ma'am. And it's invariably, they are all much younger group. The age group is 24 with a plus or minus standard deviation of 2 years. So less than 30.
So you excluded patients with very high degrees of myopia.
In fact, whatever samples we got, we didn't add that. We didn't specifically exclude it. Maybe it's a worthwhile idea what you are saying. Maybe we look at older age group and except severe high myopic, like more than 20 diopter or something.
Okay. LG sir, you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to ask Girija, because I remember that in the Heidelberg machine, if you don't get a scan because patient is not fixing properly, you can capture one single line scan on a random basis. You will still get some image, but it won't be obviously a comprehensive cube that you can develop. It's not a cube, but a single line scan you can capture. Is it okay? Have you done that before?
Yes, sir, we have tried, but it will not be centered on FOVEAL, sir.
No, it won't be centered. Wherever you get a picture, at least some information is better than no information. This is in desperate cases where you cannot get a cube scan. You just capture individual single line scans, multiple scans. Wherever you can get a capture, you can capture. That information is still useful.
Akshat, Ritika, Manpreet, all experienced with using only Heidelberg for 1 year. Any suggestions? Did you notice anything? Because see, we are spoiled for choice. We can say, yeah, it doesn't fix, we'll do this. It doesn't fix, we'll do that.
What about the Heidelberg OCTA? They have that there.
Yeah. No? Okay. Manpreet? No. Purna has had a long innings. Nothing? Okay.
I think there's also one point I just wanted to make, that the measurements of retinal thickness vary from company to company because of the reference line. The inner line is always internal limiting membrane, but outer line is variable. They say that there is one nice article I was just going through, which compared between all the machines, and they believe that sometimes the company doesn't specify, but the spectralis, for example, is supposed to measure it between ILM till the Brooks membrane, not inner layer of the RPE, while Cirrus is supposed to measure between ILM till the interdigitations of the cones to the pigment epithelium. So that is the reason why you get different values, not necessarily because of algorithms or software being different, but I'm sure software is adjusted to sort of these values, but it's more because the reference line itself is different.
Sir, because I remember reading this long back. I think 6 different companies, each one's reference line, mostly with reference to the RP.
Thank you all for coming. Thanks to Jyoti, Mohana. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming.
sir.
Yeah, thanks to you. It's a pretty dry topic, but you've managed to cover it. Thank you very much.